Hello, Doggy Nayoa 101 here. Okay, I was watching a video from Telltale Atheist. A few times I usually go back and quote through my Tao Te Ching every now and then. Yeah, sometimes this book actually gives me a lot of insight of my spiritual path for the last couple of years. I've been practicing Wiccan, and, quite honestly, Telltale has quite a few, things that I've actually never really thought about as propaganda until now. Now, I grew up Episcopalian, so when I was growing up as a child, I was raised on several different modes of thought. Most of it was very open-minded. Others, well, let's just say was a little bit on the closed-minded part. So, let's just start with a little bit of backtracking and a little bit of this. Okay? That's pretty much what I think of when I think about the Episcopal ideology I grew up on. Alright, growing up, I was raised on the ideology that everybody has their own spiritual path. It doesn't really matter where you go in life, as long as you believe in something. Then again, they've never had the Episcopalian grandmother. Okay, my grandmother, on the other hand, I could tell you horror stories about this woman, but then again, it's kind of hard when you grow up and in your neighborhood, when you're staying at your grandmother's house, everyone considers your grandmother the Wicked Witch of the West. When she was actually kind of nice to you, but hated everybody else. My cousin will tell you horror stories. In fact, my cousin was actually given a double standard. So, anyway, here's a few things that I grew up on. And these are kind of, I didn't know at the time were propaganda until later on when I actually looked at it. I was into Japanese animation, so a lot of the stuff I grew up on actually didn't exactly have propaganda in it. In fact, I didn't even think unit code could be possible. So, let's start with Moving Castle, or Moving House. Moving House was produced in the 1980s by what we now know as the Christian Broadcasting Network, CBN. They produced a couple other really ridiculous religious propaganda shows, and yeah, I don't really have clips of them, and personally I don't really want to show clips of these shows because they were quite frankly kind of ridiculous and outdated. I just remember being a little kid being forced to watch these in place of Saturday morning cartoons after going to church and wanting to go strangle myself in a back corner because of how ridiculously stupid the shows really were. When I grew up, I actually started watching a lot of different types of anime. One of them was Haiben Rinmei. Now, Haiben Rinmei may not seem like propaganda. It actually isn't. It's more of a Buddhist take on the whole Catholicism and Christianity issue. But, again, this is where I actually take some calling to the Tao Te Ching. Because, quite frankly, some of the stuff and some of the sayings from the Tao Te Ching actually make more sense than what they used to make me read in church. See, okay, this is actually number 3 or 41, and I'm only going to read a part of it, because it does have a lot to say. When the superior man hears the way, he is scarcely able to put it into practice. When the middling man hears the way, he appears now to preserve it, now to lose it. When the inferior man hears the way, he laughs at it loudly. If he did not laugh, it would not be fit to be the way. Honestly, it didn't matter what way you go in life, as long as you hear the words and you understand that there is always a way around everything. I.e., any path works. You're not being stupid if you say, yeah, I understand. Doesn't mean you have to necessarily agree with the way it works, and it doesn't mean you necessarily have to do it the way the writer or the reader itself says you have to do it. So, again, that's just the Tao Te Ching's way of saying, go ahead, go your own way. It's not like it's going to hurt you in the long run, but again, As number 40 says, reversal is the movement of the way. Weakness is the usage of the way. All creatures under heaven are born from being. Being is born from non-being. So, yeah, we all come from somewhere. Doesn't matter where. So, now, this is where I kind of come into the part of why I fell away from Episcopalian. Back in the 90s, the Archbishop of Canterbury named off a really great guy to be a new bishop. Now, in the Episcopal Church, there are two different branches of the church now. There's the Anglican and the Episcopalian. If I had stayed on, I would have stuck with the Episcopalian side, and there go, yeah, I would still be studying Taoism and Confucianism and Wicca and all that, but I'd still be considered Episcopal. I'm still considered Episcopal by some standards, but not as much as people think I am. So, let's start with this whole fallout. When the whole thing fell out, the guy who was named the new bishop was actually gay. I actually had no problem with this because I was used to a gay bishop. I was actually used to a gay minister. My minister at my church was gay. And we at the Episcopal Church had absolutely no problem with that. Because, well, he wasn't really doing anything. Other than maybe donating half his time at a freaking homeless shelter or helping out at our food bank down in Evergreen. Seriously. The guy probably wasn't really doing much of anything, and his boyfriend was also not doing much of anything because he donated half his time working at a freaking used clothing center for kids who had no money. Basically, he was donating food and clothing to people who needed food and clothing. So, there you go. That was the entirety of what my minister and his boyfriend were doing in the church. Absolutely nothing. Except maybe boying themselves in their own house away from everybody. What they do in their own house is their own damn business. That was at least what we were raised. The Episcopal Church decided to fall in on itself, so what happened was there was a split, a dividing split. The Anglican Church, which was a little bit more conservative, and more like my grandmother, and then there was the Episcopal Church, which my grandmother actually did go with. Trust me, my grandmother was not exactly as stupid, but she was a bit conservative on stupidity, for stupid's sake. So, yeah, there again. I was born in an Episcopal family, but I wasn't exactly raised to actually think like them. In fact, my mother was very shocked when I started reading the Tao Te Ching at 17. Now, as I started actually falling away from the church, the reason I fell away was I got so tired of the whole, okay, so the person's gay. What seems to be the problem here? Because the chances of, in the Episcopal Church of actually having a sexual assault with a gay minister is relatively low. Because half the ministers don't really care. And don't really see a point in this whole thing that people are paranoid about. Oh, look, the gay minister has a boyfriend. Oh, they're about the same age. Okay. Seriously, that was about all that kind of came up with the whole thing. I mean, my priest was actually pretty damn fun, and he was pretty cool, too. He also brought up the fact that my bully, who was going to the same church, was picking on me in Sunday school, and he had enough. And asked if I was comfortable coming back, and I said no. Yeah, my pastor actually told me I could not, if I did not feel comfortable coming back, I did not have to. This is coming from the fact that in most cases, and this is the stupidest thing that most churches don't seem to realize, is this is what gets integrated into the church that nobody really talks about, and it's learning disabilities, and people with disabilities get the raw end of the deal. Alright? None of us in the disability umbrella ask for it. Okay? We don't ask to be disabled. We never asked to be learning disabled at all. As for me, I never asked for it. But I was forced to tolerate the bullshit and get told, oh, by the way, you're cursed by God. But you still have to believe in him. You know what? Fuck you. I gave up. I did not give up on believing my system of beliefs, but I gave up on their system of belief. I went to a church a few years ago, and they were very open-minded, very nice people, but in truth, they still fell under that whole, but you're still cursed because you have a learning disability. You're not learning at the rate we want you to learn. I mean, okay, so I ask a lot of questions. I remember what my pastor at my church, in my Episcopal church, used to say, if you don't ask a lot of questions, you're not going to get a lot of answers. And yeah, I followed that mentality ever since. But the thing is, when you have people time and time tell you you're going to be cursed for the rest of your life because you're disabled or you're learning disabled, kind of just sort of defeats the purpose of believing in something. So when I started actually studying Wicca and all those beliefs, I started realizing one thing, and the one thing that, again, when it comes to actually getting answers, sometimes finding your own way or walking away becomes the actual point of reference. And I'm not going to go on and on about how everything goes on a different path, because everybody's path is different. And as it says in number 50 or 6 of the Tao, the Valley Spirit never dies. It is called the Mysterious Female. The gate of the Mysterious Female is called the root of heaven and earth. Gossamer it is, seemingly insubstantial, yet never consumed through use. Basically, yeah, I can use the way I used to walk around in a path and still walk the way I want to walk. Again, I am referencing the Tao Te Ching on most cases because that is a text I actually use on a normal daily basis for my life. I don't expect every pagan in their freaking right mind to actually use the Tao. It's just I use some of the Tao's sayings and the Tao's words to mean something to my personal beliefs. I'm not going to go and preach to somebody and say, hey, you need to follow the Tao Te Ching. No, I'm not going to say that. That's just ridiculous. What I'm going to say is, yeah, just read the book and you'll figure it out. I mean, I have so many different texts on different belief structures. I have books on Buddhism. I have books on Confucianism. I even have the Bhagavad Gita, for goodness sakes. And, the translation I have, the Bhagavad Gita, is way better than the one that I got from some Mooni. Okay, I have nothing against Moonies. I have nothing against people who still practice from gurus out of India, but some of their translations go a little whack job weird. So whenever I look for a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, I generally go with something called the Mystical Classics of the World series, which is a translation. This is translated by Victor H. Mair, versus the fact that it also has the introduction by Houston Smith. Again, I recommend anybody can, if you find these books, there's like 3 of them. There's the Book of the Dead, there's the Tao Te Ching, and the Bhagavad Gita, and I recommend it highly to anybody who wants to read on mysticism and other things. I do a lot of tie-ins to also video games on this, because some of the belief structure, and believe me, I think it's really hilarious, because I have a book on Wicca right now that actually covers the Kabbalah. And I haven't really covered the Kabbalah in depth. If anything, if I could ever get my mom to actually come on my YouTube channel and actually talk about this, she knows a little bit more about the Kabbalah than I do. But again, we're not Jewish. So again, it would probably be better if we allowed someone who was Jewish to tell us what the Bhagavad Gita, or not Bhagavad Gita, the Kabbalah is saying, versus a bunch of two non-Jewish people trying to interpret it in our own special method. For me, I will just mention this. I do study Wicca. I do study all sorts of different Eastern religions as well. Not to mention Shinto and a bunch of others. And the reason is because it's part of who I am as a person and a part of my childhood. I was born to ask questions. And usually this pissed off a lot of pastors and people. I pissed off a guy on walking through my college campus once when I asked him the question of why. And he said that says so in the Bible. I'd be like, okay, can you reference which part and text while I go and reference, and I brought out the Tao Te Ching, the referencing on how it is so silly to blindside yourself with one text when you have many texts that can back up the same thing. So if you walk around in a circle, you're only going to end up in a circle. So just so you know, that's actually a true fact in life. Don't walk in a circle sometimes because you're just going to end up in a circle again. So, again, I'm going to mention when it comes to things like whenever I talk about, even in Confucian terms, which I will probably post later, the discourse between philosophy and Confucianism. I am a big person on the whole thing with Confucianism and how it works. Most people don't get how I can relate to it, but again, let me see. Okay, this is actually about learning and about education. The master said, learn broadly of culture when discipline this learning through observing ritual propriety, the li, and moreover, in so doing, remain on course without straying from it. Okay? What it is saying, and I'm going to be saying this to you a lot, is just because you follow one set of belief structures does not mean you cannot actually stray from it a little bit and look at the rest of the world. The master does say to go and actually study it. The master said the exemplary person helps to bring out the best in others, but does not help to bring out the worst. The petty person does little does just the opposite. Basically, I'm just saying it now. If you want to study every religion out there, I would say start with Confucianism and work your way around it. Confucianism can be a bit trite and a bit on the conservative end of things, but it also assists on understanding where you're coming from in life. When I talk about this in probably later on, because Telltale brings out a lot of actual good things, but he also has a lot of background in the Jehovah Witness program, which I've only had maybe a minor, maybe a little bit of a thing to it, but as a practicing Wiccan, and also the fact that I also follow a bit of a interesting, tried and true way of doing things, I will not bring out the worst in somebody just simply because I do not agree with them religiously. I will say this, though, Christianity does bring out the worst in me because of the way I was treated in the Christian faith. Being told I am cursed because I am learning disabled does not make a feel-good person. It does not help somebody. So, again, when I tell people to follow the Tao Te Ching in some sense, just remember that you are not always going to have to follow the same trail, because everybody's trail is different. If you follow the same trail, you're just going to end up getting frustrated. So, when I mention this to everybody, oh gosh, where is that stupid? Yeah, that's number 4. I'm not going to repeat that one. Let's see. Oh gosh, no. Okay, so I can't really find the right quote for you guys. I'm very sorry, but I will close in saying with anything I have to say about, like I said, most of these books are pretty marked up and pretty much falling apart on me. I will make a comment for you is the best thing to do is if somebody says to pray on something, I usually use it as a cursive saying let's meditate on it. Think about what you can go about and what you can think about doing something. So I'm going to just close in saying that Telltale Atheist, you are correct on your methods on certain things. And yeah, I do agree with you. Jehovah's Witnesses are a bit of a cult in their own perspective. I don't really put my discount and saying, but again, if you are looking for any really good reads for this, for that with a spiritual sense, the Analects of Confucius. This is actually a new translation from the Dingzhao fragments or other recent archaeological finds. It's translated by Roger T. Ames and Henry Rosemont Jr. I would recommend it. If you can find a copy of this one or any copy of the Tao Te Ching, I highly recommend the Victor H. Mair translation because it's pretty good and it actually gives you a bit of a following of what I actually study for some things. If you are interested, I am not interested in actually preaching or teaching anything. I am interested in just following up on what other people's ideals are and how they follow it. Again, I do practice Wicca. So if you want to comment below and say, hey, I agree or disagree, I'm good with discourse. I don't really get an argument otherwise. Again, this is like a 20-25 minute video of what I do not think is wrong with the concept, but what Telltale did say was actually correct in its methods. Another really great way is Moon in the Dewdrop, which is a writings of a Zen master Dogen, edited by Kazuaki Tanahashi. Again, if you want to read some of this, I've been reading some of these for years, and usually I am not a Buddhist, but I do follow some of the concepts and mental thoughts. I would recommend it. Again, these are just 3 of the Asian texts that I usually work with, and I do follow in some sense. But again, I do say this in closing. You should wish to be sincerely composed for your entire life, and to practice the way non-intentionally, as in study of which you can do, and do not let it falter your mentality in any which way. You could be a Christian and still study Buddhism, and you would still be considered a Christian. You could study Tao Te Ching and still be a Christian. You can still study Confucianism and still be a Christian. Do not falter yourself from that, and don't falter yourself from learning about the outside world. And the sad thing is, this is why I do not agree with a lot of what is being said in Jehovah's Witnesses or some of the Christian sayings. This is why I kind of brought this out, is yes, I was raised in a family where, yeah, I was seeing this propaganda being propped up. If you ever look at the Flying House or any of the stupid Christian animes that came out in the 1980s, they actually do more damage than good on your mental state. It actually wrecks your intellectualism in some sense, because it actually destroys a lot of the composure of what you should learn or how you're learning this. So again, if you want to talk to me about this, it's great. I love to talk about philosophy, and I love to talk about different types of mental thought. I have my own mental thoughts, but honestly, right now, I will talk about this in greater detail. Do learn sincerely on your own. Do not let it falter. You could still be a Christian and still study half this stuff, or you could still actually open-mindedly understand that everything falls for a reason. So in closing, I say goodbye, but please keep in mind I am still trying to be an open-minded person on this. So talk to you later.